Hi, I'm Maria May from the Casting On Couch, and these are my chunky twisted rib gloves. In this video guide, I'll be demonstrating how to create the right glove. Written instructions to this video series can be purchased from my website, see the description. Do not miss my future uploads in this chunky twisted rib series. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications, and that way you'll never miss a stitch. So let's begin. I'm using Freedom Wool. It's a chunky yarn requiring a 10mm needle, so for results similar to mine, marry the ball band tension. Now this is colour 435, which is no longer in the current range, but I do have some suggestions that you might like. These are my favourite colours in the current range. We've got Blossom and Vintage Rose. Look, how stunning are they? With a 9mm circular needle initially, and your preferred casting on method, I'm going to be using the long tail cast on here. I want you to cast on 21 stitches. So there's my first stitch there slipped on, and if we just have a quick review of the long tail cast on, what I do is grab the yarn in my left hand, and then I bring my thumb around the yarn, or the yarn around your thumb. Then I insert the needle into the gap created, into the loop, and then with the right hand I bring that in between. So that's 2. Three, 4, 5, 20, 21. At the approximate halfway point, we're going to be using the magic loop method here, which means basically working the knitting in 2 halves. Now I'm going to release those stitches there in order that I can then concentrate on the first half of the work. Now round 1, oh, I'm about to twist my stitches there, make sure you don't do that. So bringing the working yarn, not the tail, begin by entering the front of the first stitch and purl 1. Next, take the yarn to the back so that you can knit 2. 1, 2. Now I'm going to show you the entire round. So those 3 stitches there are repeated throughout this whole round. So bring the yarn to the front and purl 1. Take the yarn to the back and knit 2. Bring the yarn to the front again, purl 1. Take the yarn to the back, knit 2. And then purl 1. Now we want to release those stitches onto the cable and bring the second half up onto the left needle. And don't worry about this is going to be fine in the end. Now, did I end on a purl one? Yes. So my next stitch will be a knit one. Knit one again. And then yarn to the front, purl one. Knit two, purl one, and if we've done this correctly we should end on a knit two, knit two, purl one, and knit two. So there's one completed round, that's round one. And what I'm going to do here is, normally I would use a little round marker, but in this case I'm just using Oxter hand. I'm just going to mark the beginning of the round here. So bring the left needle up, the right needle down, and then next we can complete round two. Now this is only a 2 round or row repeat. So begin round two by purling one. Let me bring that yarn to the front of the right needle, that will stop me getting tangled up. So purl one and make it as tight as you can in between those junctions, but don't worry too much if you've got a sort of ladder effect. Over time this will even out as the work grows. Now this is like a cable round. What we're going to do is work these next 2 stitches out of sequence. So we're going to enter into the second stitch on the left needle, and we're going to knit into it without taking the stitch off. Then we're going to work the first stitch, and that is called a 2-stitch right cross. And notice I'm now taking both stitches off the left needle, and we will be repeating that throughout the round. So bring the yarn to the front, purl one, yarn to the back, 2-stitch right cross. Remember, enter into the second stitch, pull it through, then the first stitch, and then take them both off the left needle and purl one, next 2-stitch right cross, so enter into the second stitch there, then enter the first, and we're going to end this first half section by purling one, like so. So again, trying not to twist the work as we progress. Bring up the second half, and make sure you've got enough movement in the cable to work the little cable stitch. Now into the second stitch, knit through it without taking it off, knit the first stitch, purl one, two-stitch right cross, purl 1, two stitch right across, purl 1, and we end the work with a 2 stitch right across. Now what I'd like you to do is repeat rounds 1 and 2 and repeat them a further 4 times, so that'll be 5 in total, and join me when you've completed those 4 sets. Your work should now look something like this. Next, get yourself a 10mm circular needle and complete rounds 1 and 2 in exactly the same manner. With those 12 rounds now complete, we're ready to begin the thumb gusset section. Now what I want you to do is work the next 12 stitches as the main pattern. So these will be the instructions for the right glove. The left glove will differ slightly. So purl 1, knit 2, and keep going in the main pattern until you've worked 12 stitches, leaving 9 stitches remaining. Pardon me. And then you will need to prepare a marker. I've got a little homemade one that I'll bring in a moment. So I'm needing to bring up the second half in order to get to the 12th stitch. So I believe if I work these 2, I will be left with 9. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Grab your marker and place it here. And this now separates out these stitches which are for the thumb gusset for the right glove. Now, if you mirror the instructions that I will demonstrate for the right glove and you apply them to the first 9 stitches instead, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, you will achieve the left glove. And if you find it all too confusing, you can go to my website and purchase the written instructions that go along with the video. For these last 9 stitches, purl 1, and then I want you to knit 2, and then create a purl front back increase. So the increase goes into the front of the stitch as if to purl, and without taking the stitch off, you want to go into the back of the stitch and purl again and release the stitch from the left needle, and you have 2 stitches where there was before 1 stitch. So that's our first increase. Knit 2, and again purl front back, so bringing the yarn to the front, purl into the front of the stitch, and then go in to the back of the stitch and take the stitch off, and end by knitting 2. So we have 11 stitches now where there previously were 9. So if we just check that, look, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's perfect. So now let's create row 14. So I want you to work up to the marker. So this is a 2 stitch right cross round, so begin by purling 1, 2 stitch right cross, and maintain the pattern to the marker and join me at that position. So I've skipped to the marker position there, look. I've got my last 11 stitches, and what we're going to do is purl 1 and then 2 stitch right cross, and then where you have increases you are purling 2 stitches, can you see? Then 2 stitch right cross, and purl 2 stitches, and end by creating a 2 stitch right cross. So that's round 14. So round 15, carry on in pattern and work to the marker. So begin by purling 1 and knitting 2. At the marker position, we're just going to carry on maintaining the pattern. So I'll show you all these last 11 stitches. I've purled 1, knit 2, and then we've got this purl 2 section here where we've increased, knit 2, again purl 2 over the increases and knit 2, and that's round 15. Now round 16 is worked exactly the same as round 14, and we are doing those 2 stitch right crosses. So that's round 16. Round 17, work to the marker position, so purling 1 and knitting 2. At the marker, purl 1, knit 2, and increase by purling into the front and then the back of the next purl stitch. So that's a purl front back. Now purl 1, knit 2, purl front back, so purl into the front and into the back of the next purl stitch, creating 2 stitches from 1, and next purl 1, knit the last 2 stitches. So round 18 we are going to work to the marker, and it's a 2 stitch right cross round. So purl 1 and 2 stitch right cross and carry on to the marker. At the marker point here, remember to purl 1 and maintain the pattern by doing 2 stitch right crosses, and then remember we've now got 3 purl stitches, so purl 1, 2, 3, 2 stitch right cross, and again purl 3, 1, 2, 3, end with a 2-stitch right cross, so that's round 18. Now round 19, we're going to work up to the marker point again, and this is a nice plain round, so we are purling 1 and knitting 2, and then at the marker section, remember we've got 3 purl stitches. So at the marker section, begin by purling 1 and knitting 2, and remember that we've got a section of 3 purl stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then we've got knit 2 and again purl 3, ending the work with a knit 2, so that's round 19. Now round 20, we're going to reserve stitches for the thumb on this round, so work your way to the marker by purling 1, and this is a 2-stitch right cross round, and meet me at the marker position. At the marker position, there's our marker, work the next 4 stitches in pattern, so purl 1, 2-stitch right cross, purl 1, and then slip the next 6 stitches, 2, 4, 6, onto a stitch holder, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and place on hold. So you still have 3 stitches remaining there. What I'd like you to do next is create cast on 2 stitches using the backwards cast on technique, and what we're going to do is wrap the yarn around our thumb and then bring our needle into the loop created. So that would be 1 stitch cast on. If we repeat that again, and then that would be 2. In fact, I might try out another technique where I cast on an additional stitch and then overlap. So I'm going to slip the next stitch and overlap that extra stitch over the top. So in effect, I've still only cast on 2 stitches there. I'm going to end by completing a 2-stitch right cross. Note how we are now back to our original stitch count, so let's check that. So we've got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Now we can carry on and build up the hand section. So round 21, we are just going to simply maintain the pattern by purling 1 and knitting 2, and we're going to continue that throughout the round. And because the previous round had the slipping of stitches for the thumb, I'm going to show you this round fully. so that you can see the area where the stitches that I cast on, sort of see how that develops. So let's bring that second portion up. And continue to work to the end, and I'm still keeping that marker. So purling 1, knitting 2, purling 1, knitting 2. Those are our little cast on stitches, purling 1 and ending by knitting 2 there. So I thought I'd show you that so you can see what's occurring there. So that's round 21. Now for round 22, just keep going with that pattern. So this is a 2-stitch right cross pattern. So purl 1 to begin with and 2-stitch right cross, and keep going with that repeat into the end. So I've just gone beyond the marker point, but I thought I'd show you the 2-stitch right cross pattern just so you can see how this is working above those stitches that we cast on earlier. So we end there on a 2-stitch right cross. So that's round 22. Complete 6 further rounds and end on round 28, which is a 2-stitch right cross round. After round 28, this is what your work will look like. Let's take a little sneaky peek. So we're now ready to create individual fingers, and we've got a preparation round next. So on this row we're going to use an 8mm circular needle, and we're also going to change the stitch pattern. We're going to work every stitch knitwise and increase a total of 4 stitches in preparation for working the individual fingers. So what I want you to do is, with the 8mm needle, is knit 2 and then into the next stitch I want you to increase by doing a knit right. So what we want to do is, if we kind of lean this stitch forward and enter into the back of the purl knob, can you see that there? If you enter into that part of the stitch and knit it, and then knit the original stitch, you will have formed a knit right. Knit 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and knit right again. So another way of doing this is to just identify the right leg of the stitch below and enter into it, knit it, then knit the original stitch. We're going to repeat that entire sequence a second time. So knit 2, so that's 1, and then we need to bring up the second half of the work. So with the second portion ready to go, we can knit that second stitch and then knit right. So again, we want to go into that purl knob and knit it, and then knit the stitch. So that's a knit right. Next I want you to knit 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again knit right. So let's just get the back of that purl knob and knit into it, knit the main stitch. So the last 3 stitches, we're actually going to slip them onto the left needle, so we need to bring them up onto the opposite side, and we're going to slip them over here and slip those onto the left portion of the needle, like so. So we're now ready to create the index finger, and I'm going to be using 8mm double pointed needles in order to do this. In sets of 4, we'll take the first 4 stitches onto one double pointed needle, and then a second. Oh dear, see that? Let's swap that, that's not good. Big splinter in that one. So the next 4 stitches, remove the marker, like so. So let's remove that marker, and these stitches that are remaining will just stay on hold until we need them for the next finger. And then if we turn this around, can you see what's happening here? Look. So if we move that, we'll be able to have some flexibility. So what we have is this, and if we work these 8 stitches in rounds, we'll create an index finger. So with a 3rd double pointed needle, I am simply going to knit 1 round. So I'm going to hold the yarn as tightly as I can at the junction so I don't have a really elongated bar, and I'm just going to work these 8 stitches. Now it's very easy to miscount rows when you build up your confidence, so if I'm doing this at home, I tend to write down after each round, because there's nothing worse than all the fingers sort of being an uneven length. So just be aware of overconfidence. It's very easy to slip in an extra row where you don't intend. So that's our first round. I want a total of 5, so I'm just going to keep going. So that's 2. Gosh. So that's 3. Four, and now for our final round. Oh, and kind of, for some reason, all my double-pointed needles are splintering, which I've never experienced that before. Now I'm going to cast off. So we knit the first 2 stitches and pass one over, knit the next stitch, pass one over, and keep going. And then what I sometimes do is I will, in a kind of crochet style, I will go under that part of the stitch and this part actually. So you don't have to do this, but this is just a little technique that generally works for me and aligns the round. Some scissors, gently pull that through. We have our first index finger there. Which I am itching to try. There. So next, what I'd like you to do is take 3 stitches from the beginning and end of your circular needle, and we are going to slip them over 2 double-pointed needles. So that's 1. And what I'm showing you here is for the middle finger, but exactly the same instructions can be applied for the ring finger. So they are identical. So what we've got is that. Now at the base of the finger just worked, we need to pick up 2 stitches, and what usually works for me is finding a nice horizontal bar. So I might, for example, enter into that part of the stitch there and then as I work round I'll probably enter into this part of the stitch. So let's attempt that. So I'm entering into that part of the stitch, rejoining the yarn and picking up one. And then a second, and I'm going to work the first 3 stitches, and making sure everything's nice and properly aligned. I'm simply going to carry on and work these last 3. So again, we've now got a total of 8 stitches. So we've got the 3 that we slipped onto the 2 double pointed needles, and we've got the 2 stitches that we've just picked up. And we're going to work another 4 rounds and then cast off. So that's the middle finger. Now for the ring finger. So again, taking off 3 stitches from either end of the circular needle holder. 1, 2, 3. Again, if we look at the base of the previous finger just worked, we want to enter and find a nice little bar in which to pick up a stitch. So here is where I might try. I'm going to rejoin my yarn and pull it through and pick up a stitch, and I will also do it over here. Let's try that and see what that looks like. So it's exactly the same as what we've already done with the middle finger. So that's 1. So that's 5, and we can now cast off. We've got 5 stitches remaining on the holder. I think what I'll do first is pick up 2 stitches at the base here, just as we've done previously. So I could go through there or there. Maybe I'll go through this one actually. I am going to pick up 1 stitch and rejoin the yarn, and I think I'll go into this part here and pick up stitch number 2, and then I'll work the next 2 stitches from my holder. So 2 from here, 1, 2, and then I'll get my second double pointed needle and work the last 3. So this time we've got 7 stitches for the little finger. So we've got 1 less than the others. So it's looking good. Can remove that marker. And now we can create the thumb. So to create the thumb, I need to pick up 4 stitches above the stitches that are still on the holder. And my approach would be to avoid these kind of long gappy ladders, and I will try entering into either here or here, and I will collect 2 stitches over the cable area because I want the pattern to align, and then again I will probably, I might pick up here, maybe here. So that's the intention. So I'm going to grab the yarn, and yes, I'm going to enter into here and rejoin the yarn, and then I may need to separate these stitches out a little bit. I'm trying to grab the bar from this knit stitch here, so that's 2, and then I will try and get underneath somehow, underneath this stitch. Maybe I will go here because I want it to look like the pattern flows as you build the thumb, but let's go for that. Oh no, we don't want that, do we? What's happened there? So we've got 2, we just need to pull that through. There we go. And then over here, shall I go in there? Let's see how that works. So those 4 stitches there, I'm going to call that needle B, and then what I'm going to do is take the stitches from the holder, and I'm going to call these stitches needle, I'm going to call the needle rather needle A, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so we've got 6 stitches. So we have a total of 10 stitches. Now I'm going to just carry on and work needle A, and this will be round 1. So begin by purling 2 and really kind of try and make that junction quite tight there between the 2 needles. So I'm really pulling that tight and purling as I go. So that's purl 2, yarn to the back. Actually the next 2 stitches need to be cabled, so 2 stitch right across. And purl 2. Now for needle B containing the 4 stitches, we are going to pull that tightly and purl 1. I'm just pulling that yarn in, yarn to the back, and we're going to do a 2 stitch right cross. And then purl 1, so that's round 1. Now for round 2, so needle A, we're purling 2, knitting 2 and purling 2, and then needle B, we will purl 1, knit 2, and purl 1. Now we need to complete a further 5 rounds. So you can see, look how well that has turned out. No gaps. It's, I think, a really nicely constructed glove. So now let's cast off. So I think I'm going to do this in pattern. So I'm going to purl 2, and then pass that stitch over. Then I'm going to knit 1 and pass the stitch over, knit 1, pass the stitch over, purl 1, pass the stitch over, purl 1, pass the stitch over, purl 1 again, pass the stitch over, knit 1, pass the stitch over, knit 1, pass the stitch over, purl 1, pass the stitch over, and then I'm going to do my little technique here. Yeah, that would be good. So just bring that through. And all I need to do is weave in those loose ends. So I'm Maria May, and I'd like to thank you for visiting my channel, The Casting On Couch.